Oh, all right. So we're so happy to have Rachelle Vettern joining us today. Rachelle is a professor in the Leadership and Volunteer Development Specialist for North Dakota State University Extension. In her extension role, she conducts research and provides education for youth and adults in the areas of leadership, ethics, generations, youth development, and volunteer development. She's enjoyed working with many Master Gardener coordinators on the National Extension Conference and Volunteerism Planning Committee in the Achieving Extension Mission Through Volunteers course and across North Dakota. In her faculty role, she teaches online classes for the Great Plains IDAA Youth Development Master's Program. So Rachelle, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks to all of you for participating today. We really look forward to having a chat with you about generational volunteering. And I was thinking through this and asking Ashley, and I think it was some of my friends that were part of NECV or our Achieving the Extension Mission course that asked me to be part of this. So I appreciate those of you out there that did. And I have to say, I really enjoyed reading as we were just getting in the mindset of generations, just those different, seeing where you're all from, and also just seeing a little bit related to your favorite songs and jeans and shoes and all sorts of things growing up. All of those kind of shape who we are as individuals moving forward. So when I started my role as a leadership and volunteer development specialist at North Dakota State University, I had a lot of people come to me, and back then I was a little bit younger than I am now, and say, some of the professionals I worked with, they kept saying, your generation just doesn't volunteer. And so I kept hearing that over and over again. And I finally said, I don't agree with that. I think our Generation Xers, millennials are engaged out there and giving back to their communities. It might just look a little bit different. And so we did some research here in North Dakota with extension participants and volunteers to really find out and discover what they wanted out of their extension volunteer experience. And what they were doing and how they were giving back in different ways depending on the generation. And so what we found is all generations really like to volunteer. They just have different ways of doing that. And so that happened. And then as we moved through, we have in the North Central region, there's a group of us that are all volunteer specialists or work with volunteerism across the board, not just with 4-H. As you can see, I still have my clover up here from National 4-H Week. But with volunteerism across Extension, and some of our best partners have been the Master Gardener coordinators when building and developing our Achieving the Extension Mission Through Volunteers course. And part of that course, the conversations that were had in discussion boards and other places were the importance of working with and including volunteers from different generations. And so we just continued to do more work and looking at and more research related to this. So I hope you'll join me today in exploring this. The materials that we've created or that we've kind of put together are a combination of things, but one of the things my colleagues who is a millennial and my graduate student who is a Gen Z wanted me to continue to remind people is that all generations have strengths and gifts and talents that they bring with us in volunteering, and that we don't do any generation bashing, because we just all work a little and volunteer a little differently, but that doesn't mean that we don't have all things that we bring to the table. And I'm sure you've seen that out there as Master Gardener. So with that, we'll continue here. I wanted to let you know that at the end, we will be sending out the materials. I will send out a PDF with all of my slides on it. And then we actually have some other curriculum we've developed on Gen Zs and generational diversity. And I will share that all at the end and you'll receive it as an email. So let's get started here. So our goals today are kind of to explore those different components of a generation. Most of you, of course, have probably done that a little bit before, so we'll move through that information quickly. And we'll kind of talk about some of the challenges and opportunities of working with different generations and of volunteers in our workplace or out there in our community. And then kind of think about ways that we support and recruit those volunteers from from those different generations. And so I want you to take a look at this chart here. And Pew actually kind of a lot of different places have broken down the generations over the years, and there's a little debate about what those are. But I want you to take a minute and look at this. And if you're comfortable, type in the chat what generation you're from. As we move through this, it's important, and the ones that are kind of in the middle, the ones that are bolded are the ones we're really going to talk through this session about volunteers. Not that we don't love our builders in silence or those Gen Alpha, but the builders in silence, they're a little bit, they aren't as actively volunteering out there anymore. Some definitely are. And then that Gen Alpha, they're just a little bit young to be joining us with too much. But if you're working in the schools, you're working with some of them. So great. I see we have millennials, Xers, boomers. We have some cuspers out there who are in the middle and some silence. Awesome. Just a total mix. So thank you for being willing to share that. You can probably tell I'm a Gen Xer through and through, but definitely I have Gen Z, 2 generations Z teenagers who keep me in line all the time, and lots of coworkers across the board. And then the boomers. Awesome. Well, thanks for thinking about that. The other piece I want you to think about is who are your main or primary, who comprises your Master Gardener group that you work with. And as we talk today, I really want you to think about not only the generations you currently have. I think as I talk to a lot who work with Master Gardeners, they might have a lot of boomers who are volunteered that are fully immersed. But then a lot of individuals are very excited because our Gen Zs are passionate about pollinators and pollinator projects. I know Esther McGinnis in our state has been wonderful working with our 4-H volunteers and our 4-H youth to become really excited about horticulture and learning more about pollinators through some training she has done. So I feel like we have the Z's and we have the boomers, but are those millennials out there and the Xers that we continue need to think through how we engage them. So you think about the groups you have. Yes, those Z's are amazing, right? And then think about the ones that you want to recruit and look at some of those characteristics as we talk. Yes, Shannon, they are amazing. Yes, and you've helped us with those too in North Dakota. Thanks for being on today. So we'll keep moving here. Some of you mentioned this just as we're moving through quickly with these generations. We do have some cuspers as we talk about what generation you're in or your volunteers are in. We do have some that kind of feel like they can transition between one or another. They might be between a silent and a boomer, between a boomer and Xer, that millennial Z, Xer millennial. The great thing about these individuals is they're wonderful at being able to translate or kind of mediate between 2 generations. They're able to move through and talk about characteristics of both. And they're kind of less intimidating to new employees because they are kind of those welcoming ones. Sometimes they're respected. It's just kind of a nice, they're good at kind of translating and mentoring. So you might be one of those individuals. And if you are, we feel that we're lucky that you're in this organization because they really can help Extension move forward with volunteers. So think about your baby boomer Master Gardener volunteers out there, or possibly ones that you're thinking about recruiting. Just to understand their characteristics and kind of where they're coming from as a generation. These volunteers are kind of make up about 23% of our population. They are willing to be engaged. They're very educated. They're very independent. They require quality in the programs that you deliver. I'm sure have worked with a lot of them that some are still out there in the workplace. Others are really ready for a volunteer experience. They're looking for ones that really do provide both some personal gratification and an experience that will help them really share their knowledge and resources that they've gained over the years. They do really value health and youthfulness, vitality. I think those of you that I've worked with or are boomers really know that They're fighting the aging process. If you talk to orthopedic surgeons, they've talked about that they are not only replacing knees and hips once, but actually more than once, because these boomers could refuse to slow down or to really stop, because they're very engaged. So pretty cool generation to have volunteering for us. Those Xers out there, I saw a bunch of you. And as I'm typing, if you have great ideas that have worked or thoughts about those boomer volunteers out there, feel free to type in some of those. We're going to be asking or doing some activities here in a minute. And that reminds me, hopefully Ashley has, and I know Anne has emailed out a handout that I have for you. And I think Ashley dropped it in the chat, but I'm going to have her do that again. Just as you're following along, I kind of have the breakdown of the age groups. I also have some characteristics of each generation and those generational volunteering pieces on the back too. And we're going to use the bottom of the handout at the end of our session together to do a little work together. And then we also have a couple places where I want you to fill in some things. So thanks, Ashley, for dropping that in the chat again. So if you look at the back of that handout, and also just kind of look at some of the characteristics as we go along. Our Gen X's are very, if you think about the characteristics of your volunteers from this group, they are serious about life. They're pretty self-reliant. They're loyal to relationships. Might be a little skeptical about getting involved because they have a lot of different commitments. We're going to walk through some of those different volunteer pieces. As you think about values, they really value diversity. Yes, I see a great chat in there. They think globally. They are very much about life balance. They're techno literate. They are fun, and they're pretty informal when they're volunteering. This is a smaller group of individuals to recruit. There aren't as many Gen Xers out there, just because this generation, there was that huge baby boom, lots of boomers out there in the workplace. And then those boomers they decided not to have quite as many kids as their parents did. And so we are a smaller generation right after that for many, many different reasons. And I can send you my generational presentation that walks you through all of those things too. But just in light of time, we're going to move on to the millennials. As you think about those millennial volunteers out there, we're going to talk a little bit later about how to recruit them. They are ambitious. Yet they still seek sometimes some guidance from those older generations, although they are getting to be that older generation of volunteers to that middle age group. I hate to say that, but they have some different characteristics than the Xers and the boomers. They are very overscheduled and busy too. That generation was the first generation that literally had over 25 to 50% less free time than the other generations, the boomers and the Xers and those silents. And so for that reason, these volunteers tend to want to do everything and anything, and sometimes get a little overscheduled because they commit to a lot of things. So if you're a volunteer manager and working with the generation of millennial, you want to talk through what they think they can support and handle, along with the million other things that they're involved in. But they are a creative, energetic generation. So they're more optimistic than the Xers. I saw one of you typed in, Mary, the Xers have been called the forgotten generation. In a lot of ways we are. So, but we're still like a vocal group out there, I think. And then millennials, I think over the years, we've been told that they can multi-switch or toggle between different things. But we say, depending on, it's just kind of all about that time management piece. And you can see their values there too. They're confident, they value achievement. They do really value civic engagement. They're one of the first generations where there was more formalized service learning. And so for that reason, they truly understand the value and importance of being engaged in their communities, just like our Gen Zs. So they do know and understand the importance of giving back. And of course, they love, and they are the first digital natives. They're really pretty good with technology out there. Now our Zs, I know I see some of you said, yes, those millennials definitely overscheduled. That's like, that is, we could go into a whole discussion about how we're overscheduled because there were so many more activities and your parents kind of scheduled your whole life, and that's carried over into the workplace in a lot of ways too. So, uh, but I would love to do just a generational diversity session with y'all sometime too. So think through these volunteers that you're working with and think about those different pieces. With our Z's, a lot of you have probably had some training on that. I'm going to share a whole link that's that you'll get sent out on a lesson plan we've developed on Generation Z's and getting to know that generation. It's pretty awesome. They think a little bit differently about volunteering, and we're going to go into that. They're very passionate about it, but want to be more solution focused about how they solve the problem rather than just do some of the band-aid pieces. So they're very diverse. They're very well educated. As we know, digital savvy, they can be the ones that help you with your social media and even help you with recruiting new volunteers using different platforms to do that. They are very independent and competitive. They're skeptical possibly about volunteering, but at the same time, not doubtful once they commit to doing something. And again, they really are thinking through what their post-secondary educational options are. So I have actually seen here in North Dakota, and some of my North Dakota colleagues can attest to this, we are seeing some really cool things about the youth that are involved in our Junior Master Gardener program and involved in our pollinator projects. Many of them who are urban, if you can say we have city kids in North Dakota, we really do. And they have really had their eyes open to the possibilities in agriculture and horticulture, thanks to all of you that work with Master Gardeners. And they're considering careers in those areas because of their work and their volunteering for the pollinator project and other things. So I want to say thank you for opening their eyes to other career opportunities and exploration and even entrepreneurship. I know there's a few of our kiddos who are making some good money selling honey and doing some other things like that, creating a lip balm out of it's just been amazing to see what's happened. So that's thanks to your programs and volunteering and getting involved in the work that you do. So somehow, well, so again, yeah, the common sense piece, we could go into brain development. I see that in the chat. And again, this generation, they are youth or young adults. You know from brain science that our frontal cortex isn't completely wired until you're probably, now they're saying 26 or 27. We were just talking about that related to some of our own college age children. Some of their decision making is just not quite wired yet, but that doesn't mean they aren't amazing volunteers. And I find our undergrad and graduate students and our high school students really are energetic and able to help with so many different parts of our 4-H program and our Master Gardener program. So again, we all have different challenges and strengths as generations. So we'll focus on those really good ones, and hopefully you're a good mentor to those that are continuing to work through developing those brains out there. So I want you to just take a minute. I've been chatting a lot before we really dive into the volunteerism piece. Just quickly type in the chat your favorite generation that you really like to work with as volunteers. So one of them, there might be more than one. And then just one of the things or one of the characteristics you really like about that generation. So maybe it's the Xers and you like that because they bring out some experience, but then also they're kind of that balance between some knowledge, but then also some of that excitement and energy stuff. So again, just type into the chat and I'll unshare here for a minute. Favorite generation and why you like to work with them as volunteers. Right. Yeah, those Xers and boomers similar to you. We were talking about, Ashley and I were talking about, we really like those boomers, but we also like a few, but then thinking about setting up maybe displays at farmers markets and thinking about different groups that you want to encouraged to be involved depending on the time frame and kind of what time you have in your work schedule. You access different generations to work with depending on time. So if it's something during the school day, a lot of times our millennials and Xers are in the workplace and can't do things, but we have students who need service learning hours, so we can mobilize some of those Gen Zs or maybe work with some of those boomers who are retiring. Yeah, Brenda, I'm so glad as I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking about some of my Gen X friends who, believe it or not, their children are starting to be out of the house. And now that they're done with all those sports activities and everything, they do have a little more time to volunteer for Master Gardeners and other extension programs. Great, Boomers, Xers. We're going to have to hear more about those millennials. We have to get them mobilized out there. Yes. And they are really at that stage too, where they're running around at all their kids' activities, still building their careers, some of those pieces. So awesome. I'd love to see all those. I'd love to see the Gen Z thing pieces too. So, okay. Well, thanks for being so engaged. I really appreciate it as we talk through these pieces. Just trying to look at the time frame here. So with this generational volunteering piece, I want you to, I'm just going to just indulge me here as I just kind of go through some of these pieces, because this is what you're here for. So think about those volunteers you know and work with, and then also think about the ones you do want to recruit. So quickly, just want you to think about, and I did include the silence because we have some of you on here, and because some of the silence in our communities are still taking decision maker roles or still in decision maker roles. We still have a lot of county commissioners and legislators in North Dakota, I know, that are silent. So I did include a few pieces here so you can mobilize them for some things. So think about those, the different generations you want to recruit or work with. So as you think about working with silence, I want you to really think about when you're recruiting to change that image of aging, that instead of using names such as senior, you use, or older, you use post-career. That goes for the boomers and even some of us Xers now too. Think about providing work or volunteering that's meaningful and challenging and can make a definable difference. They want to know they're making a difference in their communities. Focus on as you talk with them about skills, experience, and leaving a legacy. So maybe if they're in a role now with you, thinking about how they're mentoring their replacement and leaving a legacy too. Again, really creating that opportunity for mentorship and leadership. Oh, I stopped sharing on purpose, and then I forgot to reshare. Thanks for that reminder. I just wanted to see you as you were putting in your chat. Oh, so thank you. Here I go, back to this part. Thanks for the reminder. So then as you move on to those baby boomers, I want you to think about repackaging the ways that you offer those volunteer opportunities, to focus really and think about the work that needs to be done and the skills that are needed rather on, they don't care as much about volunteer status. Think about designing and managing your volunteer positions more like a paid position. They're very used to being professional and in that workplace. This is important for this generation to have role descriptions, have good training, have the availability of good supervision, and then also talking about what are the benefits of volunteering for or becoming a master gardener. And obviously you provide amazing education with the benefits of knowledge that they can take back home and use in their horticulture and their gardening projects. So consider the volunteer, those baby boomers, their skills and interests, because they really want to be able to highlight and use the knowledge that they have gained in their professional career or out there in the community too. Think about pairing these generational, a lot of our Gen Zs love to volunteer or work with boomers and even those silents as mentors and friends to kind of do that cross-generational sharing and learning. So that's kind of an important piece to those boomers. I know in our 4-H program, we have a lot of boomers that are coming back as grandparents or great-grandparents and helping volunteer with some things too. So it's a nice cross-generational piece. With those of us that are Xers, we still need those flexible roles and schedules. A lot of times we like more casual attire and tasks. I think these younger generations, or almost everybody now with the pandemic, really thinking through what that all looks like. Comfortable volunteering important opportunities, opportunities to volunteer with their children if possible, to do some things together, or even sometimes with their grandchildren if they're older Xers. And then those millennials, when working with them, really create and think about meaningful positions with real responsibility. Again, providing them opportunities to take the lead and use their creative ideas, making sure you give feedback to all generations really about the impacts they're making. When we did our research in North Dakota, we found that volunteers really want to know that they're making a difference in the community, and that was a key piece for them. So, and finally, those Z's, as I mentioned, this is one of the groups that they really want to see a difference and make a difference and see social change. They want to go, rather than just volunteering, I always say, for the food pantry, they want, or collecting food for the food pantry, they want to work to figure out how to literally end world hunger. Like, how do they focus on legislation? How do they fix things? I know my Gen Z son said, I want to eventually own a business where the people in my company don't have to seek services like that we can support and nurture and pay them well enough that that we focus on and really do end that poverty, peace, and hunger. So these youth really and young adults are the ones that are trying to find and discover those solutions. So if you can harness some of that power, talk with them about how gardening and horticulture and volunteering can make a difference. I know a lot of our youth groups out there that you work with are doing things like growing food to be able to support some of the food pantries, and doing more than just that we're teaching them skills so that they can change the direction of kind of what's happening. So again, volunteering is a great opportunity for those cross-generational partnerships. And I know I need to get moving here. So the other part I want you to think about as we talk through this quickly is really thinking about your preferred communication, or what they prefer and how they prefer to communicate as generations. So as you're trying to reach these different ones, some of you type this in the chat too. The silents want simple and straightforward communication, letters even, and phone calls. Pick up the phone and talk to them. Boomers are your ones that are still okay with the phone too, if they're answering questions that are coming into the extension office about things that are going on with bug infestations or other spots on their tomatoes, all sorts of things. But they're the ones that you can reach by phone. They also like face-to-face networking, and they are really pretty tech savvy too now, as far as text, and they're onto Facebook too and things, so you can communicate with them that way. Xers, as you think about how you're going to reach them and recruit them, maybe it's a direct approach. You do that personal ask. I always say with all volunteers, if you can get one of your current volunteers to recruit a potential volunteer, they can sell the program better than anyone else. Or if you do a direct ask about, asking them or inviting them to volunteer to use their skills, that's going to have a lot more impact than just sending an email or doing a general post. It's good to just create awareness that way, but important to do some other things too. But if you want to reach them with information, of course, they check their email. Some of them like voicemail, some do not. And of course, social media too. Millennials do not like voicemail for the most part and aren't going to listen to it. So maybe those of you that are millennials can tell me differently. But communicating with them about events that are going on, the current ones you have, social networking, emails, and of course text a lot of times. And then those Gen Zs, you can see social media and texting. But when they come in to volunteer with you, they do really like face-to-face work and communication with other generations. That's what's surprising. Or we'll see, even I'm sure those of you that work with Gen Zs, they are FaceTiming each other a lot. They're interacting that way. They're not afraid to do that or be engaged that way. So think through how you're what you're doing for communication strategies. So with that, I want you to take a minute, and on your worksheet, I want you to kind of answer these questions for yourself, or just on a sheet of paper even. What strategies is your organization or your Master Gardener coordinator in your role? What are you doing to recruit and work with different generations of volunteers? What can you do to strengthen your work with those? And kind of be ready to share. What are some things you're doing well? What are some things you kind of want to work on maybe with what you're doing? So go ahead and do a little writing about that. And you have a little space kind of 3/4 of the way down on your worksheet to do that. Give me about 2 minutes. Okay. Well, hopefully you got through that quickly. I'm moving along fast here. We have lots to talk about. Think about kind of what you're doing, how you might reuse some of these strategies to work with others. And again, you have a lot of more information on the back of your handout there about working with different generations of volunteers. So, and again, you'll have this handout too. So just quickly want to talk to you about recruitment before we move you into some breakout rooms to talk about ways you might recruit and find different volunteers. So outreach ideas quickly, you can see some of the places that you find these baby boomers and how you might track them down or advertise. A lot of times we find at fitness and wellness centers, they very much care about their health and healthcare facilities. Some of them are still working for corporations and businesses. Those are great places. And they still do read newspapers online and pay attention to some of those high profile media pieces. Gen X, you can find them a lot of times. I see our Gen Xers working and volunteering when places like Microsoft offer employee volunteering opportunities or corporate volunteering opportunities to get them engaged. They're still taking kids sometimes to the pediatricians' offices, so we've advertised there for things. Wellness centers. One of the things a lot of these Xers and millennials are doing are attending their, if they have children, they're attending their sporting events or their music programs, and they get a sheet of paper that they are always looking for what's on there related to their kids in the program. We've snuck a lot of volunteer recruitment or advertisements in there because they're actually using those. Or looking at them. So that might be a place, or announcements during halftime or other places talking about how your program might be looking for volunteers if the school will let you do that. Millennials, the millennials are great about peer-to-peer recruitment. If you have a volunteer event where you can ask them to bring a friend to help out with something, maybe it's something where they're getting exposed to volunteering for Master Gardeners, or just the work that you do. To think about those places. Again, they like those employer volunteer experiences too. Gen Zs, we can see social media sites. They need a lot of experience for their college campuses or high school service learning projects or service learning hours, help them get scholarships, if there's ways you can tie into that. And I know currently my 15-year-old in our faith community, as part of her moving through that faith experience, she's required and encouraged, and their group is doing a lot with volunteering in the community. So you might think about accessing those Z's that way too. So again, as we wrap this up and we're going to move into those discussion, or kind of some discussion groups about this, I do want you to think about really the strategies that you're using to work with different generations, how you can connect them and work with, tie them together. Thinking about their learning preferences, their working preferences, offering some cross-generational mentoring opportunities to connect those different generations together in volunteering with Master Gardeners. It's really important and actually is very, gives a great quality to that volunteer experience. So we are going to send you into breakout rooms to chat with each other for about 5 or 6 minutes, related to designing a volunteer experience, maybe for a generation that you aren't currently reaching out to and want to, or one that you're already working with that you want to heighten that experience. So quickly, on the bottom of your worksheet are these different pieces we want you to talk about. And we're going to make your work fast. And hopefully we don't lose too many of you. Whenever we say breakout rooms, a lot of times people leave the session, but this is your chance to talk with each other. We want you to talk quickly about what would a role description look like for maybe a new millennial volunteer or Gen Z volunteer? What kind of work hours, as you're recruiting them, what kind of work hours are you going to give them? How flexible are you? They're going to want to know the dress code. Do we dress up for this event because you're talking to a bunch of people at a farmer's market, or is it you're going to be digging in the dirt so you don't have to dress as fancy? How are you going to reach them with communication? What does that working environment look like? And then how are you going to be professional with them and engage with them? And what is the expectations for them too? So quickly, we're going to send you into, I'm going to stop my screen sharing here. Those things are at the bottom of your worksheet. And Ashley's going to send you off for about 5 minutes to rooms to talk about this. And then we're going to come back and share what you've discussed. A few of you will have shared. So, all right, see you in a few minutes. Ashley, I don't know if there's a way that you can automatically send them in there or not. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
I don't know the answer to that.
I know, I should have thought about that. Sorry. That's okay.
Let me look here.
Yeah, I can't tell. It looks like if you hover, it says move to. But I think that's just to change it to another room.
Yeah. Should we pause the recording for this?
Oh, yeah, perfect. Well, welcome back. Welcome back, and thanks to all of you who stuck with us. I know as soon as some people hear discussion boards, or discussion groups or breakout rooms, they hit the road. So thanks for being engaged and talking with each other. Hopefully you had a chance to design and create a really good experience and think through. I hope you'll take this and think through how you create those different generations. I'd be curious, we don't have a lot of time here, and I will reshare my screen. Thank you for the reminder. To just type in the chat quickly what generation your group decided to talk with as far as the need for volunteers in the Master Gardener program. If you would just type that in to the chat, just with our time, I'd love to see what that looks like for you and what group you're going to work on. Great. All right, so those are things as you're thinking through and planning your volunteer experience, please consider those things. Because when you're recruiting them, they want a good position description or role description. They want to know what they're committing to, getting themselves into, and these are all pieces of that. I know in the Master Gardener program, you have great templates for that. If you need another one, I have a general volunteer recruitment template that you can use to fill in if you want that too. Just quickly, I know we have to wrap up this session, and I thank you for participating. I have a couple more things for you really fast. Throughout this research with generations, this is a whole dumping of, we have some articles, but this is what we found out in general about generational volunteering. All of the generations want it to be a social affair for the most part, a chance to connect and work with others they wouldn't usually work with, to learn from others that they wouldn't usually work with. So make sure that you provide some networking opportunities for your volunteers, even if it's just cookies and coffee or produce or whatever it is, and making it fun. That is the thing that's going to keep all generations coming back, making them feel like they've contributed and made a difference. Throughout your program, demonstrate the need for volunteers. Talk about why you can't be the only one sharing this knowledge, that mobilizing these master gardeners and having them involved really extends your reach and reaches all sorts of different populations. So be vocal about that. I mentioned the position descriptions are key. Very important as extension professionals to manage those experiences and opportunities and trainings professionally, begin on time, end on time, which I'm not doing right now, and really think through how you run those so they feel like they're being treated professionally. Treat them respectfully. They really do have huge impacts out there across our communities, as you know. They have a passion for horticulture and gardening. You know that you can recruit volunteers in this way that we can't sometimes do in other areas of extension. The one thing that over and over came up in our research was this piece I have in bold, is really helping volunteers avoid gossip, especially I see this in our smaller communities, and that negativity at all costs. And what we found is that the professionals that were managing these volunteers didn't do that. If they didn't stop that from happening, they were not going to come back to volunteer. So if you have some of that ickiness happening, just say, you know, we really are people of character here. We operate respectfully and responsibly and use that caring piece. And so we don't have that happen in our Master Gardener program or our extension program. It's just not part of who we are and what we do. We operate from a code. And then finally, recognition is key, saying thank you. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Across the board, as I've worked with volunteer groups, their favorite thing to receive is a handwritten thank you note from you as the volunteer coordinator, or someone out there, if there's youth that are being taught by boomers and boomers that are being taught by Zs, having some thank you notes from those groups, no matter what age group, that was their favorite thing. You know, some of us, a mug is great, a new Yeti mug or whatever, you probably can't afford a Yeti. But we really, the most important thing is those thank you notes. So one of my favorite quotes here from Susan Ellis, and I'll share that one with you. I do want to get to the point, and then we're going to drop this return on the chat here. One more thing, for those of you that are interested in learning more about volunteers and volunteer development, we have lots of Master Gardener coordinators across the country who are helping as facilitators with our Achieving the Extension mission through volunteers course. If you're in the North Central region, talk to your volunteer specialist, but you can find out more information about, this is about a 6-week class to learn to really work with and manage your volunteers. If in the Master Gardener group, we have people that will facilitate. You'll be put in a group with other Master Gardener leaders and coordinators so that you can really talk and dig through how you most effectively manage your volunteers across your state and your communities. And so thank you, Julie, for saying that. This is one of the things we've been working on, because we know when we come into extension, a lot of times we all have different expertise we come in with, but a lot of us have never managed volunteers before working in extension. So just kind of a reminder of our program components. And here's my contact information. If you want additional information, we'll be sending some of this out. Here's some pictures from my own little 4-H club, where we have a grandma who is passionate about pollinators, along with her grandson, who really mobilized our 4-Hers to be involved in the Master Gardener program and plant a pollinator garden and everything. So just the perfect example as you think through cross-generational work together and volunteering. This grandma really did help our 4-H club learn more about horticulture, gardening, pollinators, and all of the above, along with your grandson there. So I will share this presentation. I have lots of references if you're passionate about generations and generational volunteering. And of course, we love to be inclusive and obviously want to make sure that that's the work that you do. I think is incredible because you reach all generations, many areas of the country, and just all sorts of different backgrounds. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing in Extension. And I will stay on if you have any questions. I know we're past time, and I'll make sure that we share out some resources. I apologize for having to zip through so fast. But thanks for asking me to present, and I'll be here for a while.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting and helpful. And I know with my program, I enjoy seeing the different generations. I know I have a grandmother who's brought her granddaughter into my volunteer program, and then a young, it's probably a Generation Z that's brought his dad into the program, which is pretty cool too. So this is all really, really interesting, and we'll have all those resources because of course we'll have the recording and everything all put together for you, and we'll send an email out. One last thing that Ashley and I wanted to mention is our next webinar will be in December, and it will be a little bit different than having a speaker. So that means we need some help. And you'll see here on the slide, we are going to be sending out a survey, and I'll put that, oh, Ashley grabbed it and put it in the chat. Thank you. And I'll email it out as well. And so we just kind of wanted to try having a discussion on some of our kind of end of the year reporting things and all of that. So if you're interested in sharing some data, if you want to help lead some discussion, please complete our survey. We'll send it out again via email, and it's in the chat now if you want to pull that out of the chat. And if you could have it filled out by the end of the month, that would be great. And then I think it might be all we have. The news blast is there. Again, our last webinar for the year is December, since we do every other month. So again, if you have any ideas of speakers or topics you'd like to hear about going into 2024, Ashley and I are scheduling those as soon as we have ideas. So send those to us as well. And we appreciate Rachelle for speaking today. And thank you all so much for joining us today. And I will send out the resources as soon as we have them. So have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.